Blessings, everyone. I want to tell you why I left the church over 9 years ago now. So when I came to Christ 17 years ago, I started off by going to a small evangelical church led by pastors from Brazil. And it was all new to me. The Bible was new to me. I got baptized again. Everything was new to me because in Catholicism, they don't teach you these things. So it was like an introduction to what it meant to be born again. And I didn't know anything about being a disciple. So I trusted these people and I followed everybody else. So first of all, most of the community there was Spanish speaking. They were not Canadian. So all the messages were translated either into French or English. So the first experience with this church, after about a year, I started to wonder why they had every single day was for some area of your life. Let's say Monday evenings was for the family. We'll pray for the family. Tuesday was we'll pray for your finances. Wednesdays was for your health. We'll do spiritual deliverance and so on and so forth. The thing is that every time you went, they asked for an offering. You had to pay. So I began to feel uneasy in my spirit. And I talked to some other people there, but they didn't seem to mind. They didn't seem to think anything was wrong with that. Somehow, it didn't sit right with me. But you know, when you're new in a group, you're the outsider, you're the newcomer, you think everybody else is right and you're wrong, right? So, but it kept nudging at me every time. And then I said, okay, no, something is not right here. And then I realized also, like every 6 to 9 months, they would change the pastor. Some new guy came from Brazil. Also, that bothered me. It was like every time we get used to a pastor, they change him. And then they would do this, what did they call it? I forget now, but it was like a prayer night. We're going to pray all night for you. Oh yeah, like a petition night. Write down on a, and put it in an envelope. Write down everything that you want from the Lord. All the problems you want to resolve. Write everything, put it in an envelope, and of course with an offering. And we're going to petition for you. We're going to pray for you so that God will answer all your prayers. So that night I did go. And I remember putting about $200 in the envelope. And as I was sitting there listening to everybody, I felt convicted. And I went up to the pastor at the end of the service and I told him, I don't feel right about this. Why should I give you money? God does not need my money. See, nobody taught me that. I believe it was revelation from the Holy Spirit that was telling me this. I wasn't even reading the Bible, really. It was really by pure revelation in my conscience and in my heart that this is wrong. You know what the pastor said to me? Well, lady, sister, if that's the limit of your faith, I'll give you back your envelope. It's all right. You don't have to contribute. I said, okay, give me back my envelope. I took my envelope and I never went back. And that was that with that church. Then, because I was still a baby in Christ, I was, 3 years old, I was invited by other sisters, French-speaking sisters, to go to this huge French Pentecostal church. And I didn't have a car at the time. I had to take the subway and the bus. It took me an hour and a half to get there. It was a huge church. They had 2 services because they couldn't hold everybody. They had thousands of people going there. And so they would ask, if it was your first time, to raise your hand. And they would come after the service and give you like a kit with all like explanation about their ministry and all that they offered. They had groups for married people, groups for single people, groups for women, for men, for children, okay. So anyways, and then when, they asked me to fill up a form, and I had to pass an interview in order to become a member of the church. And you know what they asked? They asked for a monthly contribution. If you want to be part of our church, you have to write down what are you prepared to contribute monthly. That was already like a pill I couldn't swallow. It just stayed there. And I said, oh, okay. I said, what happens if, people have no money? People are poor. They can't, write down your financial situation. And I said, well, does that mean I can't come to the church? Oh, no, you can come to the church, but there's a but. And then there was the situation with the praise, they call it praise and worship, but it's not worship, it's praise and thanksgiving with the musicians and all that, because I also wrote music and I wanted to share my God-given talent with them. Oh, I had to pass another interview, an audition. It was a very complicated system they had, almost like a military thing, that you had to be screened, and and everybody was so careful. They didn't want anybody to demolish their big an industry. I call it an industry because it wasn't a church of God. Far from it. It was a club with all those activities that they planned continuously. And so for the music thing, it was like, oh, it's like, sorry, you're not up to our standard of musicians. Oh, okay. Nice, all right. And that was strike 2. Strike 3, I remember my granddaughter being a baby at that time. She was maybe 6-7 months old, and I was babysitting her that day. So I brought her with me, and she was, what babies do, giggling and smiling and laughing. And one of the ushers came to see me, and he said, I'm sorry, you can't stay here with the baby. You're disturbing. making too much noise. There's a room downstairs for the children. You can go and bring her there. I said, excuse me? Are you serious? Do you think if Jesus was here, that Jesus would say that? On the contrary, Jesus said, let the little children come to me. Don't ever push them away. They never disturb. On the contrary, they are the purest, most innocent, beautiful creations of God. I couldn't believe he told me that. I said, okay. I got up and I left. Never went back. All my other friends, my sister, oh, we're going here and we're doing this and they're having this, all these like entertainment, and that's why they stayed. They weren't looking for the truth. They weren't looking for Jesus. They weren't looking to meet with the Lord. They were looking to be entertained, to be taken care of by the community, to receive invitations, help, whatever. You see? Distractions. And I went before I left, I went to their picnics, and I went after, the service, they had lunch, and we would go to a restaurant. Everybody would, what do you think they talked about? They didn't talk about Jesus. They talked about their own life, their problems, and how, I could see how the single men were trying to recruit single women, and I was hit on by. I was like, I don't want to be part of this, so I left that church again. I was getting discouraged. I said, Lord, what is this? Anyway, long story short, my friends, I went to several churches to see almost the same pattern over and over again. Not only that, but of course, some of them also had wrong doctrine, completely wrong doctrine. And in the last one I was led by two brothers from Brazil as well. And they had, all their little community. They were all friends. They knew each other from Brazil, and they came here. So they all spoke in Portuguese among them. And I felt like I was an outsider. I wasn't really accepted by them. They would talk in Portuguese among them, the sisters I'm talking about. And as soon as I would walk in, they would stop. And they would switch to French. I was like, what's going on here? There was no harmony. There was no oneness. And also, they preached a lot on healing, on laying on of hands. They had American healers come from the States and preach on that, and how we're not supposed to be sick, we're not supposed to have any illnesses in our body, and if we do, it's because we don't have enough faith, and all that garbage. So one time, it was a 3-day conference with these people from the States, husband and wife team. And what do you think? They're living on these conferences. Because in order for them to come, we had to pay. So they collected the money from us in order to pay for their plane ticket, probably, and their accommodations. Is this really the work of God? So I lifted up my hand when he was talking about healing and all that. I said, what about Paul's thorn in the flesh that he was never healed from? That was not a sickness. He was referring to being persecuted all the time. That was his thorn in the flesh, being persecuted. I said, really? What about Timothy, who had stomach problems, and Paul couldn't heal him? told him to drink wine as medicine. Oh, that's another subject. That's another. Boom. I get revelation, my friends. How did I know these things? I didn't. It was an inner stirring from inside. The Holy Spirit was telling me, ask him about Paul. Ask him about Timothy. This is wrong. It's not because I had Bible knowledge, but because I was close to God, always asking him to reveal the truth. And that was that. That's why I don't go to church anymore. I cannot belong with people who, number one, preach wrong doctrine, but seek their own, talk about people behind their back, gossip, hypocrites. No. Or belonging to a church that is like a huge club with, entertainment, and that's why I left. In any case, shortly after that, I went to Africa for 2 weeks, and that was a big wake-up call as well. Anyway, and it's only when I came back where, I almost died over there. And it's when I came back that God led me to Brother Zach, the New Covenant Life, real doctrine, the truth. And I found what I had been looking for all my life, not just since I got born again, but all my life. I was searching for that truth. And thanks to Brother Zach's messages, I was able to touch that truth, to grab hold of it, to get closer and closer with my Jesus, to know him, and to die to all the false ideas I had about him, all the false concepts that I absorbed from all these other churches, whether it was from my birth being Catholic and then transitioning to being born again and going to Pentecostals and Baptist churches and charismatic church and all that. It was like the Lord did like a huge purification in my mind to destroy, to remove. That's what he did with Moses. With Moses, who believed he was the prince of Egypt and all that he learned from his life as a prince and Egypt, and he had to demolish all that, like a huge brainwashing in order for God to put the real truth in our mind. It was a painful process. I cannot deny that, my friends, but every new birth is a painful process. I'm so grateful, because now, the Lord shows me the truth. Like he will, from that, I encounter these people, or I hear about them. Their life is a mess. Their life is a mess. They're still living like worldly people. And they think they're going to heaven. I feel bad for them, but there's nothing I can do. I'm just grateful the Lord took me out of there. So I'm encouraging you to seek for the truth alone with Jesus, not in a community, not in a church, not by following their system, their rules, their protocols. Oh, there was another one I forgot about. That was a disaster. This sister on Facebook, she befriended me because she liked what I posted and all that. And she said, we'd like to invite you to our church. I said, okay. And then she said to me, but in our church, women don't wear pants, nor do they wear short sleeve or sleeveless. You have to be covered. I said, really? She says, yes, that's how it is in our church. I said, is this in the Bible somewhere? I don't recall reading something like that. I've read that we should dress modestly. I said, but okay. I said, I will comply. So I wore a long dress with a jacket, whatever. And they came to pick me up, and we drove to their church. And as soon as I walked in, I saw a symbol of a pyramid. And I said, what's that? Oh, don't worry about that. We'll explain that later. And then I saw a picture of a older man. I didn't know. I said, who's this? This is our leader, she said. It's William Branham. I said, who the heck is William Branham? Where is Jesus? So anyway, I was asking too many questions. They didn't like that. Let's just go through the sermon, sister, and we were invited to one of our brother and sisters' home for lunch. And okay, I went along just out of curiosity to see, where is this leading to? I go to their house. What do I notice? How they treated the pastor. They treated him like he was God. Pastor, please welcome in my home. Please have a, like he said. And I was like, what is this? Nobody would eat unless the pastor would eat first. And, they waited on him, all the women serving, and oh boy, okay. The funny thing is, I was wearing a sleeveless dress, but I had a jacket on top, but it got so hot in the middle of lunch, I took off my jacket and everybody stared at me. As if I was, I don't know, a monster or something. And I could see, they were offended by what I had done. Oh boy, okay. Bottom line, I discovered in the end that they were following the teaching of this man, William Branham, who's dead now. I'm not sure if he's with the Lord or not, because he was a very charismatic kind of preacher who would prophesy and do healing. And he was the kind of preacher who would spot somebody in the audience and say, you have cancer, and or you have heart problems, and that kind of ministry. So they were following him. They were not following Jesus, nor speaking of the gospel. Yes, my friend. And then when I found proof about this false William Branham, I sent the documentation to the lady who had originally invited me, and she never answered back. So that was proof. You see, this is all the garbage that goes on, my friends. Better walk alone with the Master and have the truth in you. Have the certainty of being with Him than belonging to something like that. So don't be feeling sorry that you can't find a church, you can't find people to fellowship with. No, on the contrary, this was my situation. I am so grateful. I am so grateful because He taught me more one-on-one than I could ever learn from any church. I do fellowship long distance by internet with certain people, yes. And that's enough. That's good enough. If the Lord, if He wants to gather me with other believers, I'm sure He will send me the right people. But I know He deliberately extracted me from all these false ideas that you absolutely have to belong to a church and you absolutely have to have fellowship and you absolutely, there is no absolutely. It depends on your circumstances as well. So what matters is our personal, intimate relationship more than anything else. So ask yourself, my friend, if for you it's more important to be surrounded by brothers and sisters all the time and talking to them every day and meeting every second day with them and all that, and you spend very little time with your Father, something is wrong with your Christianity. Because if one day you end up by yourself, you're going to fall. Because you've been depending on these people more than you have been depending on Jesus. Don't rely on anybody else but Him. I hope my little testimony has blessed you and enlightened you to make the right decision. God bless you.